Okay. Someone was asking about this little question. What is an element? Of course, this is very simple, something that we always deal with every single day and every single night. But what is an element? We have the tiny substance. Let me begin from the basis, of all this. Remember, we have the tiny particles. We have the tiny particles, of course, called atoms, that make up all the things that we see. We call them atoms. Then these atoms combine, and when they combine, they are of the same kind to make a substance which is pure. That pure substance made up of atoms of the same kind, we are saying the pure substance, which is made up of atoms of the same kind. This pure substance is called an element. So what does it mean simply? It means that an element is a pure substance made up of atoms of the same kind. Let us give an example. Here. We have one of the elements being maybe hydrogen. Hydrogen is an element. What does this mean? If the element is called hydrogen, then the tiny particles that make up hydrogen are called hydrogen atoms. Then they are called the hydrogen atoms. Each small particle here has the properties of this element called hydrogen. So when many hydrogen atoms combine, they make up an element called hydrogen. Then, are there other elements apart from hydrogen? Of course, they are there. Very many of them have hydrogen. You can have hydrogen, you can have many others. Let us look at another definition of how people define, or how we can define an element. An element is a pure substance. That cannot be split into two or more simpler forms, by any known chemical means. What do you mean by this? I want to take an example of charcoal. Which is an element called carbon. Mainly, carbon is the one that makes up charcoal. When you get the charcoal as a big particle and you split it several times, if you split this, you get charcoal particles. What does this mean? It means you have not chemically divided charcoal into other ways, but you have simply physically divided charcoal. That means chemically, these charcoal particles have the same properties as charcoal, an element which is carbon. So that means you have not divided it chemically. This is a physical division, splitting up a big molecule to form small molecules. If these particles are of the same kind, then chemically, you have not done any chemical division, but this is simply physical division, as long as these particles have the same properties as this other particle and of the same likeness. So this is simply how you can define an element. What are some of the characteristics that each element should have? Characteristics of an element. characteristics of an element. What should an element have? One, for something to be called an element, should have unique particles. Should have unique particles. These particles are what we call the atoms that make it up. For example, carbon atoms should be different from hydrogen atoms. Very different. Those are the unique particles we are talking about. And an element, second, should have a unique symbol. Should be represented by a unique symbol. Should have a unique symbol. For example, carbon written as C. You get helium written as He. So they should have unique symbols as elements. An element should have a unique particle. Those are the atoms that make it, should be unique to that very element. Then it should also have a unique symbol. At least these two must be there. Otherwise, an element is simply a pure substance that cannot be split into two or more simpler forms by any known chemical means. Then it is simply also a group of tiny particles that are of the same kind, that have the same properties. The same properties that these particles should have are the same properties that we are talking about. For example, the same properties that we are talking about of these particles, in brackets you can call them atoms, of these particles in bracket called atoms are 1. For example, let's look at the proton number. The proton number. Remember, atoms have protons in their nucleus. Therefore, this proton number should be unique for an element. Each element must have its own unique proton number that identifies it. For example, carbon with the proton number 6. So it should have a unique proton number that identifies it. Second, should have a unique mass number. That is the protons plus the neutrons in simple terms. Protons plus the neutrons should be unique to that element, apart from a few isotopes that occur. But otherwise, this is what you can talk about an element for now. But next time we are going to begin from these particles that make up an element. So next time we are going to talk about the atoms. What are atoms, and how do atoms actually combine to make up compounds and so on. Therefore, thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe for more and comment where you need some correction. Thank you.